consideration is that we look the effect that these have on particular districts. Because if one side of town is booming with economic development and others are not, then perhaps maybe that would be pro rata based upon the side of town, and it doesn't adversely affect projects from other side of town. Maybe we can look at that to say, okay, this is your district's allocation. If you want to do a 380, great, that's fine, but that allocation goes from your area, not from the entire city, because of what it then does as economically challenged part of the city. They will never get an opportunity to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And you know, my job is to try to keep 10 or 11 council members where they support the CIP. There is no magic in it. Council can vote to move all the money into one district from one district. We try to present a balanced package. Unlike the budget, which really does reflect the administration's priorities and policies, the CIP is about, it's more of a reflection of where we put our priorities as a city in terms of the infrastructure. And the bulk of the CIP is based on the budget, the CIP budget that council passed last year. So 4 years have already been voted upon by council. It's the 5th year that we try to play with and then adjust for costs. So I'm not. There's no ownership here. We try to strike a balance, and if we don't get it right, amend it.
Yeah, I still have time. My understanding from yesterday's conversation at the BFA meeting is that council really doesn't have to pass the CIP. That the CIP is already there's no. It's not like the budget where our ordinance we have to. Here, the administration could just move forward without even the passage of that. Correct?
Correct. Although it defines the spending. What would happen is that we would just operate on the previous past version of the CIP.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Green, I agree with much of what you said, but I think your last comment, just to give maybe a little bit different perspective, is that while the 380 may benefit a particular district, I think once that reimbursement is made, the money should come back to the general fund, and I would hope that would grow the pool of monies for all districts, because hopefully it will be used back into the general fund. And so hopefully we can see the benefits if these 380s are being successful, that long term it will help the entire city. Mayor, I think the takeaway I had last week was that my colleagues just want to see the transparency up front to make sure that we identify the source of funds, because I think if we still make the decision, but we know fully with our eyes wide open what it's being used for, and we still go forward, then I think that's okay. And I think the administration agreed, basically saying that going forward we will identify the source of funds up front to make that decision. And then I was also under the impression that with the 380, a lot of the risk is also with the developer, because if the incremental value isn't reached, then they're on the hook for that money. They do not get reimbursed. And so we're leveraging our money up front, but if that increment isn't reached, then they do not get reimbursed. That's another point I wanted to make. In the event that it does reach increased value on that increment, which would be a positive thing, and we do get the monies back, I guess I just want some clarity. Will that money go back to reimburse the initial fund that the monies were pulled from? Because if we use DDSRF, will we reimburse that first, and then the additional monies in the out years go back into general fund?
No. I mean, the developer spends the money up front, and we say, if you generate, as you rightly pointed out, if you generate a certain amount of increment, whether it's sales tax or property tax, we'll reimburse you for the infrastructure only that you put in, not your development, but your infrastructure. And because whether it's property taxes or sales taxes, it goes into the general pool, we pull the money back out of that same general pool. if they meet the target. So it all comes into the common pot. But again, I will own it that we didn't specify upfront that water sewer infrastructure would be reimbursed by water sewer, that street and drainage infrastructure would be reimbursed by rebuild, and that any other kind of infrastructure would come out of whatever the appropriate fund was. We will do that in the future. That's our fault. We didn't think about doing that.
Colleagues, one of the benefits, I think, of the 380 is that in many ways, the development community is funding our CIP up front for monies that we don't have on hand to go and fund. Where we need to be creative is in how we're distributing, the reimbursement, but also how we're distributing these 380s around the city, because if it is indeed a benefit by them funding some CIP type projects, then we should also make it part of the criteria that we look for opportunities in districts that do not usually get those opportunities, so that they can see the benefits of that direct CIP investment. And so maybe that could be also part of the criteria, is to say, is this project in an underdeveloped area? And so, because if they do, then maybe we could really help prioritize it being a 380 agreement, because they're taking that risk up front and they're helping improve the infrastructure in some of these underdeveloped areas. Thank you.
Councilman Costello.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, this is not about the 380 agreements. I fully support the 380 agreements. This is about the fact that the funding source that we're using to reimburse the developer, we're doing our commitment contractually wise to match the developers' payment because they have created an increment. Their increment has gone into the general fund, and the general fund should have been replacing those dollars and not from the enterprise fund. And in particular, a couple of these reimbursements are actually agreements that were done even before Rebuild Houston was created. So, remember I told you last week, I said, this is not about my amendment, this is really about your projects, okay, because it was going to impact your projects. And there was also a discussion last week that there was about $16 million of room within the budget. If we're trying to recoup this $6 million, we can do it there, but I don't think anyone really paid much attention to that. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk specifically, Mayor, and I think you might need some help from the city attorney. If we were to go back and say that we wanted the $380 out of the CIP and going back to the budget, does that, because I think the train has left the track, I'm just curious, is that a possibility? So in essence, if we decide as a council here that we're not going to fund the 380 agreements through the CIP document, what happens then? I'm sorry,
I don't have, she says, let her think about you have the power, to do that. We have an obligation, however, I'm not going to allow the city to default on its debts. I would have to take it out of the CIP, out of the general fund, which would mean that something would have to give in the general fund.
Okay, well, that was the purpose of my question. Thank you, ma'am.
I think you can legally, I'll let the city attorney investigate it, but I think it's a legal motion, but recognizing that it's just as painful on the other side of the ledger. Councilor started.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it possible for us to ask Kelly Dow to come forward so that I can ask him this one question quickly about the,
Sure, although again, we're going to be talking about this again next week.
I understand that, but it helps me in moving forward and when I get the calculations so that I can be informed going into the next meeting.
Sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Mayor, we're at this point where we've made all our amendments, and it's my understanding that the item will be tagged.
The item and the amendments will be tagged, and we'll be talking about it again next week.
We're the week after that, when we come back. So would that be a more appropriate time